What they always say, the sailing community is that you will break before the boat will. You will mentally break or physically break before the boat will break. I like having 3 of us on the boat because then 2 of us can do something on the boat, and then I've done it before where I'm like, you grab the camera, film it, and we're gonna do this. Whereas if there's only 2 of us, I'm like, we gotta do this, we'll get the camera later and talk about it.
What I didn't get to ask her that I'd love to ask you is if the traveling content stuff ever feels like a job. Is it an escape for you, or are you on the clock all the time?
We were talking about internet service. What do you have when you're out on the water? What contact is there? You don't hear a whole lot of people in their 30s having strokes, aneurysms, things like that. It does happen, but it's not, an everyday thing. How do you do this, knowing that a significant problem can pop up out of nowhere? Mm-hmm.
Hey, welcome to the Create Unknown, the home of Make Something Mean Something. I am Kevin Lieber. With me, as always, is Matthew Tabor, and we are live on Discord because it is TCU night. TCU night is every Wednesday night, 6 p.m. Eastern. We are hanging out with our patrons in the episode chat and some lurkers and creepers who aren't patrons but just want to hang out and listen, and we like them to do that. Welcome, lurkers, creepers, etc.
Yeah, and it's good to have people showing up week after week like this. This is awesome. We've got a really unique one today, but a couple Patreon notes. One is that we still have annual subs up, which gets you a few months free. It's quite a deal out there. I think it's $20 straight up for the year to be a 12-month tot. That cuts a couple months off from it. And also, I wanted to shout out Electro Voice because, again, they hooked us up with some very nice microphones, the RE20s, timed with the release of the RE20 Black. There's kind of this putty color to the original one, and it's kind of been the gold standard for broadcast microphones over a couple decades now. And then they released that in black in late November. Kevin opted for black. I opted for putty because I like the earthy aesthetic. But
I like to be shrouded in darkness. If anybody actually is watching right now in Discord, I have my camera on. You can see there's very little light, and what light there is eerie and frightening, and that's the way I like it.
Well, the mics have been amazing, and we've gotten great feedback from Ben, who handles our sound, people like Bass Weight, who know microphones better than they should, giving us feedback. It's really good stuff. So, if you want good sound, check out some of the Electro Voice stuff. It's excellent. Are we ready to talk guest, Kevin?
Yes, yeah, really, really excited. Quite a departure from our normal guest, and that's what I'm excited about.
Yeah, so many of the people who we've interviewed have found YouTube as an outlet for their art in this natural progression of creativity. Most of the stories are like that. A handful stumbled onto the platform in really unlikely ways. Bobby White, whose channel is called Sailing Doodles, might be the unlikeliest of all of them. And in episode 79, it seems plausible that we wouldn't top this story in the next 79 episodes either. Bobby was a commercial pilot for 18 years until suffering a stroke at the age of 38. All of a sudden, he wasn't even able to read, let alone fly a plane. Selling real estate didn't quite work out. So he made the obvious career move to sell everything he owned to purchase a 35-year-old boat. He set sail with a friend and his 2 Labradoodles and started filming it. 5 years later, he's getting 25 million views a month on YouTube and has rabid fan bases on Instagram and Patreon. By the way, spending 6 months at one of Bobby's top tiers gets you an invitation to sail along with him. His most recent episode is about scouring the coast of Belize. He travels with different crew members, some of whom are recurring. He's got a vlog style with some camera and some GoPro. to catalog days in the life of an adventurer with videos split up into seasons for easy consumption. A December catastrophe to the boat Naughty Dog, that's Nauti, necessitated a video called On Fire, Sinking, Rescued by the Coast Guard, and a dire fundraising appeal. We'll talk more about that. But Bobby, the truly unique thing about you as a YouTuber is that you actually seem to like going outside. For the rest of us in YouTube and listening, what's that like?
Oh, well, hey, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me on, guys. Yeah, no, it was not a career choice that I thought was ever going to happen, and it kind of does require to go outside. Nobody wants to watch a video of me in my, hotel room or something. I have to go out there and explore the oceans and kind of give people a taste of what it's like, because there are a lot of dreamers out there that want to go do it.
So what year, let's give people a timeline here. What year did everything kind of crumble for you?
Well, I believe so. My stroke was in 2015. It was in September. So I was a pilot. I thought that was going to be my career forever, and I woke up about the worst headache you could ever have, and tried to text my girlfriend at the time, and all of a sudden realized I couldn't read, and I was like, okay, something's seriously wrong. I was able to call her because I could still. It's hard to describe. I couldn't process the words or letters or numbers or anything. I was able to call her though, and she obviously told me to go to the hospital right then. And anyway, long story short, I spent a couple weeks in the ICU. They did a couple surgeries to fix it, and then I knew that being a pilot was pretty much a non-starter at that point, because it's a 2-year minimum for any kind of brain or heart related thing. Like if you have a heart attack or something, it's 2 years. You're not allowed to fly commercially.
Oh, okay.
So then I tried selling real estate, hated it. And then so in 2016, I had always wanted to go sailing and cruising. And then I started, listening to a podcast actually, about sailing. And, he interviewed, a sailing couple that was on YouTube, and they had around, 150,000 subscribers at the time or so. And, so I started watching their YouTube stuff, and I was like, well, if they can do it, why not? So I sold everything I owned, bought a boat, and, started sailing and making YouTube videos the fall of 2016. And about the time I ran out of money, I was, thanks to Patreon and all the great patrons and everything, I was able to earn enough to live on and keep making the videos. And here we are almost 5 years later now.
So you really rolled the dice on this. I mean, what did you have any kind of backup plan if this went sour?
Sort of. I had always wanted to go sailing and cruising, but do it for extended time, but maybe retire early or something. There was nothing holding me back at that point. I mean, because I hated, my career as a pilot was done. I hated being a real estate. And so I was like, what's the worst that happened? I go out there and I fail. I run out of money. And my backup plan was, by the time I run out of money, hopefully I've got enough experience boating to maybe get a job on a boat as crew, okay. And so I would, sell the boat and then, get a job doing that. But as it turns out, about the time I did run my savings done, I was earning enough off Patreon and off YouTube to keep going.
And what? Oh, sorry. Go on, Kevin.
Well, I want to. I like knowing why people hate things. First of all, that's very interesting to me. What was it about real estate that you hated? That you just were like, I cannot do this. I'm leaving. It
was super high stress. I mean, because everybody, especially residential real estate, I mean, everybody that's buying a house, it's the biggest purchase they will ever make. And so they're always super stressed about it. And then that stress kind of feeds over into you, because they're always like every day checking up on the process as things going wrong. And then inevitably something would go wrong with either the lending side or the title side or something, and it would be delayed and everybody's freaking out. And it was just so much stress. And the fact that, being a commercial pilot, I mean, I was making pretty good money. So to maintain that lifestyle, I mean, real estate's not something you can just start doing and then be earning 6 figures a year. You know what I mean? And so I had to spend a lot of money on advertising. And so if I had a bad month, I mean, I was spending like $10,000 a month on advertising. So if I didn't at least earn that much money, I was losing it. And so it was just a lot of stress with that, and decided, you know what, it's not worth it.
Yeah. That's interesting because I've always heard, as it relates to being a police officer, that you're constantly meeting people on the worst day of their lives.
Right.
And it sounds like as a real estate agent, it's not that dire, but it sounds pretty close. Like you're constantly involved with people making incredibly life-altering and sometimes ruinous decisions.
Yeah. Well, it's often, it can be the worst day, but it can be also the best day. I mean, somebody buys their first house and it's, when they walk into it that first time when you hand them the keys, they're all pretty excited, and so it can be pretty nice too. So I'm not saying it was all bad. It was the stress part that I liked dealing with the people a lot, and doing all that, but the stress was, I just didn't like it.
Right. So we went from highly stressful to vacation life. It seems
well, it can be quite stressful on the boat too.
Okay.
It's because you have any problem, or the weather is different than forecast or something like that. It's not like you can just pull over. You know what I mean? And you're not moving real fast too. So, and you got to be, especially, you're dealing with a 35-year-old boat and, deal with a 35-year-old car. There's gonna be a lot of stuff breaking all the time, And so it is a vacation mode, but it's also a lot of work. And then add on top of that, I mean, you guys know how much there is involved with running a YouTube channel and creating videos and all that. So you add all that together and it can be a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to ask you real quick, a point of clarification here. Can you explain the difference between a boat and a ship? Because Kevin and I, Kevin had a video with Royal Caribbean Cruise, I think it was.
Yeah, Royal Caribbean.
Filming that massive solar eclipse. It must have been 2017. So they were positioned directly under the point of totality, and they made a big show of it, having Bonnie Tyler sing "Total Eclipse of the Heart" as it happened. It was
that's cool.
It really was pretty wild. But as we got on this thing, this woman pulled us aside and was like, "Do not call this a boat." It was really a strange encounter, because it was sort of like we'd be saying, like bringing up the one topic that's taboo. So what is the actual difference here between a boat and a ship?
I've never been a stickler for proper nautical terms. I get a lot of crap for that because on the videos, because you know how the trolls can be on the comments and stuff. And, I say something wrong on the boat. If I call a toilet instead of a head, people just leave comments like, you don't know what you're doing or something. As far as shipping a boat, gosh, a ship is big, a boat's small. I don't know what the deciding factor is on that, like where the lineation is.
What the line in the sand is when
right, yeah.
a boat becomes a ship.
The line in the wave. But Matt really did not do justice to how serious this moment was. It was while we were boarding the ship, not the boat. And in terms of it being like the one taboo thing, it was like do not say the name Voldemort. It was like that. It was like
it really was. That's a perfect way to put it. Yes. It had this gravity, this seriousness that, we struggled to get there on time and, to get through the port and everything. And we had some gear problems. Eric, who was handling all the filming and stuff, I think he had a suitcase full of gear that didn't arrive on time. We were scrambling, and then all of a sudden, this is the biggest issue in the world is terminology on ship and boat. So you mentioned that that you're not a stickler on the terminology. What was your level of knowledge with all of this coming into the project?
As far as sailing or YouTube or what?
Sailing. Was this truly out of the blue, or had you been sailing for a long time, recreationally?
I grew up sailing small boats, like, little lasers and sunfish, which are just one or two person boats. And, it's no big deal if you flip the thing over, because whatever, they're easy to right. So I kind of knew the general stuff on it. I had chartered a boat a couple times, a Beneteau in the Bahamas, just as you do a week-long charter and you go cruising around. I had never had any formal training. I read a lot of books about it. and dreamed about it. And I read a lot of books back before you could YouTube and watch anything on it. There was guys that had written books about them traveling around the world on the boat. And so you kind of got a lot of good insight on like how things work when you're out there. And then sailing is, it's just physics. It all makes sense. There's nothing magical about it. It's just, it is, the wind goes this way, you go that way, So, and then if the wind gets so high, you get so big of waves, and you gotta really, I think being a pilot kind of played into it, making it easier, because navigating is very similar for an airplane and a boat. It's just, in 2 dimensions instead of 3. And the weather planning and all that is very similar. And kind of, especially in the commercial side of airline stuff, you go to school on those airplanes for 2 to 3 weeks a year. And basically, they teach you how they build the airplane. And so you get a lot of mechanical and engineering information on that, which kind of translates into the sailing thing too.
What kind of things did you learn in the books? Like, I would imagine, I don't know anything about anything when it comes to like cars, like any sort of vehicle. If it is more complex than the ballpoint pen that I'm holding, I'm totally ignorant to it. So I would imagine, in my naive, dumb brain, that actually experiencing sailing is how I would learn how to do everything, and have somebody hands-on, like that type of learning. What kind of things did you learn from the books that you were able to apply once you started doing it?
Well, a lot of it's like weather planning, and like you don't want to be sailing in the Caribbean from July to October, right? That's hurricane season, or you got to at least be aware of that. And you have to keep track of, where if there's a named storm coming or whatever. And then, things like, when are the trade winds? Like, if you're wanting to go across the Pacific Ocean, you don't want to do it in, November, December, right? You don't have the trade winds, and that's the storm season. So you wait until March, when you have trade winds and you have a good crossing across the Pacific Ocean. And so it's just stuff like that. Yeah, you're right. As far as actually the sailing part and getting out there and doing it, there's no replacement for actually experiencing it. You can do all the book smarts you want. You can even take the classes. You go to school. You can take a week-long school on, how to sail and all that, and they put you on a boat and do all that. But until you're the captain of the boat and you're the one responsible and in charge, you just got to experience that. And that's the plain and simple of it.
Mm-hmm. What is a trade wind?
So the trade winds are generally, you got the rotation of the Earth, right? So on the lower latitudes towards like the equator, they generally blow from east to west. And then, you got the Coriolis effect, which turns as you go more northern, to the middle latitudes, like say the latitude of like Kansas or something, the winds generally go west to east. They just kind of circle around. And so, different times of the year in different places, the weather patterns can change that, like for instance, like near Indonesia, for most half the year, they go east to west, and then they kind of turn around and go the other way. And so, you just got to be aware of this, the storm seasons and stuff like that. So, yeah.
You put all this together, you sell everything. What was the first route that you planned? Like, did you just kind of get out and figure it out as you went along, or did you think, okay, here's a definitive kind of run that I'm going to do, and then I'll go from there?
I had a general idea, get to the Bahamas, and then, can island hop the Bahamas. But I started in Houston, Texas, and probably wasn't the smartest thing to do because I didn't have a whole lot of experience. But we had just what was a perfect weather window. It was a full moon. We had good forecast for 4 or 5 days, and it was 5 days to cross the Gulf of Mexico, like straight across from Houston to Key West, basically. And I talked to my friend, and we were planning maybe just hugging the coast and going down. And then I was like, man, this weather window is just too perfect. And so we're like, screw it, let's go. And so we did 5 days. It was our first sail. Probably not the smartest thing to do. Straight across the Gulf of Mexico, without a whole lot of experience, and dodging, there's a million oil platforms out there and stuff, and some of them aren't lit very well, and go across there. So we made it, no problem at all. And kind of freaked the family out a little, because we were we actually made it to, because we told them it'd be about 5 days. It ended up taking us 6 to get to the Dry Tortugas, but there's no cell phone service there or internet or anything, so we couldn't notify anybody we were there for a couple more days. We actually, there was a guy, they have a little tourist boat, airplane that on floats that goes back and forth. I gave a guy that was going back my mother's phone number and said, hey, will you text her when you get there and let her know we're alive? Because it was still a couple more days till we could get to Key West. So she was freaking out a little bit. Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah.
She must have been so
and
nervous.
then just Key West, we made it as far as the Virgin Islands that year, and then came back and left the boat in Puerto Rico for hurricane season.
The full moon, is that for visibility? Is that what the benefit is there?
Yeah, it really makes it better at night, because if there's no moon and you're offshore, more than 20 something miles, you don't get any, light radiation, or whatever, light from the cities and stuff like that. It's dark out there, and it's really unnerving because, you can't see the waves, you can feel them and you can hear them sometimes, especially, man, like if you got a following sea, which means the waves are going with you from behind to forward. And you got a big, anything over like 15, 20 knots of wind, the waves are starting to get pretty big, and you can hear the waves kind of rolling over behind you. And that's a little bit unnerving when you can't see it, and so that can be a little intimidating the first time that happens.
Yeah. But sounds scary to me.
It can be, but that's what, once you get that experience, that's what it is. Once you get that experience and you know what your boat can do. Generally speaking, what they always say in, the sailing community is that you will break before the boat will. And you will mentally break or physically break before the boat will break. You know what I mean? Unless you're just in a terrible situation. And that is just poor planning generally on your part, it can be poor planning, or weather that's unforecasted, or just a series of events. It's never just one thing when there's a failure that leads to some kind of problem. It's never like this happened, so we're screwed. It's 3 or 4 or 5 things added up to cause the problem. And that's the same with airplanes and boats. It's never just one thing, Mm-hmm. Maybe you didn't check something, or something else broke, which caused more stress on this other part, which caused more stress on another one, and all that. So
when you did that first 5 or 6 day run, did you start filming straight away?
Yeah. We, I had no idea what I was doing really filming wise. I think back, I think we recorded a couple videos of that. I was using a very basic editor, and I look back at the quality of those videos, especially the audio. Oh man, it was so bad. So 5 or 6 years ago, there was only maybe a dozen or less sailing channels on YouTube. And so it really wasn't as hard to stand out and to gain a following and all that. But nowadays there's hundreds, if not thousands. So starting out now, I think, would be way more difficult than it was then. So I'm glad I started when I did. You guys started, Vsauce was 10 years ago or something, isn't it?
Yeah. Vsauce started, right at the first wave, no pun intended, of educational YouTube channels. It was really at the forefront, along with people like Smarter Every Day and Minute Physics and Vi Hart. There was a handful, but it wasn't like you say today. It's very similar. The education space on YouTube now is there's a billion channels.
Right. Well, it's hard to...
Yeah, I think everybody feels that same way, though, looking back at the initial stuff. And Kevin mentioned Smarter Every Day. Destin that was the first episode of this podcast that we ever released. He was episode number 1. And I remember him talking in it about the first thing that he did that got big, which was holding a chicken and showing that their heads stabilize even when you move the chicken around in a circle. And it's like... it's like a 90-second video of a guy doing goofy stuff with a chicken. There's no production quality. There's nothing outrageous about it, and now you see the things that he does, and it's shocking levels of quality and planning and research and production. Well, you know what? He started by, kind of gently choking a chicken. and here he is now. But yeah, no, I think getting in at the right time is a nice bonus. But I think everybody's got that story of their initial stuff just is not, it's not going to win them an Emmy.
Well, I think a lot of it is what I did. I mean, anyways, every time I edited a video, I learned a little bit, not only the editing, but how to film it better. And then, as I made more money, I would upgrade equipment, upgrade cameras, upgrade to drones and all that. And so unless you just have an unlimited budget and experience to begin with, it's just, you got to start somewhere, right? And roll it in and do a little bit, even if it's just using your phone, heck, the camera and audio on phones these days is pretty good. You can do definitely a high production level with a phone, no problem.
Mm-hmm.
Did
you start fresh on all of the media elements of this, or is that something that you'd played with in the past?
No, I was total novice at it. And kind of, gosh, I think back, it would take me 17 or 20 hours to edit a video to start, and then I actually ended up hiring an editor 9-10 months ago, which was one of the best things I've done. Just take so much of the workload off, and he's better at it than I was, so, because now I can concentrate on the more creative parts and doing, creating more content instead of having to spend, because I'm doing a video every 5 days. So, instead of having to spend 15, 20 hours a week editing, I can work on other stuff, be more productive.
Yeah. That's one of our biggest mantras that we repeat and try to bash over the head of all of our listeners and everyone that we speak to on this podcast is as soon as you can afford, and that's the big thing, to be able to afford to pay somebody to edit for you. But as soon as you can do that, do it, because it is such an unbelievable burden that is relieved of you. And like you said, and all of a sudden that 15 hours, that 20 hours that you reclaimed,
right?
You can do things that you never could do before, building and growing and learning more and getting better shots that you didn't have time to get or whatever. And, watching your videos, I would love to hear about what your process is for making them, because they're mini documentaries. These aren't really vlogs. It's not like, hey guys, I'm in the Bahamas. I just got here. I'm having mahi or whatever. It looks like you are stitching together, or your editor now is stitching together a lot of footage from different days and different parts, and reaching shore or having a problem. So, like, how long is it taking you to make a video, and how much footage are you recording to then get that 14 minutes of content?
Right. Generally an episode is over 2 days. And I don't really have much of, I might have a general outline of what we're going to do. I'll think, okay, today, we're going to sail to this other island, and then we're going to go explore that island, do some hiking. And then they got a nice little, resort, and, maybe we'll get into paddle boarding or go fishing or do something like that. I don't really plan or script anything out. I just kind of record it as we go. I have a couple different cameras. The Lumix GH5 is my primary camera, but if I'm going to be in I'm on the water, right? So if I'm going to be in a somewhat dangerous position, where something could get wet, GoPro with the Hero 8 with the media kit, like the external mic that adds on, the audio is so much better using that. And then just kind of, as you're going along, you're thinking, okay, this would be a good shot for this, and you kind of do it all up. But the main part, especially what I always tell people if they're getting into it, is go through and organize your footage like the next day. While it's still fresh on your mind and you know what all those shots were. You don't have to sit there like, if I've got stuff from 2 months ago, I'm like, oh man, what was I doing that day? I don't even remember. And then I'll forget some scene that was kind of important. Mm-hmm. Whereas now I organize the footage, and it's for my editor, I'll organize the footage in, like, I'll put, like, say I'll have a episode 25, right? And then in that folder, I'll have 7 or 8 subfolders, and they'll be labeled 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so, and it's just sequential, right? And so, like, one is like, okay, getting up in the morning and getting the boat moving and putting the sails up, right? Number 2 is underway. We saw some dolphins and, or caught a fish. And number 3 is like we arrived there and went to the beach. And, so each folder has its title as like a number and then its basic description. And then I put all the footage in there from the cameras. And if the footage is not very, if it's nonsensical basically or non-sequential, I'll put a little readme file in there and be like, okay, this happened on here and here. And so my editor kind of knows all this stuff. I've actually never talked to him on the phone. We've only emailed back and forth. And so that's kind of thing, but there is no real plan. I mean, through experience, I mean, you guys know, I mean, you get, what's going to make good footage and what's not going to make good footage. And then but sometimes even I'm like, oh, that's not going to be good, but I'll, whoever I'm with, be like, oh, I'll just film it. And I'm like, okay, fine, I do it. I'm like, you know what, that did work. And so you just got to keep your eyes, mind open to trying different stuff there and trying out new shots and everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love hearing how the sausage is made because it's fascinating to me, like your subfolders and ordering them and labeling them. Because that sort of like systemization of content is everything when you're doing repeatable things. So you're making a video every, or you're putting them together every 2 days. You're putting them out every 5 days or something like that.
Yeah, I try to do every 5 days. But I mean, that's why I think organizing the footage is so. I mean, doing it soon, like within a day or two of filming it, because it's fresh in your mind. But then you have anybody that's ever filmed with a GoPro knows that all of a sudden it'll reset the date and time on it, and then so you have no idea when something was shot, right? So like, I'll just have. And that's just the worst because you're like, oh my God, I have like 80 files on that SD card still. Which day was from which? And you're like, and it's awful. So, I mean, if you do that if you're doing it every couple of days, you'll catch number one, that your GoPro has done that to itself. And also it's easier to, okay, this was over here. This goes with this episode and you can move it where you need it to be.
Mm-hmm. Was there anything that you didn't get? Like, is there any sort of white whale that you like a crazy moment that occurred that wasn't captured on film that bothers you?
Yeah. I mean, there's plenty of times when kind of the thing about sailing too is that often, you got to take care of the boat and what's going on first. And so, especially if you're shorthanded on crew, like I've done it before where like, I need to change this sail right now because the wind's really picking up. If we don't, we're going to be in a bad spot. And, if I've got enough people, like I like having 3 of us on the boat because then 2 of us can do something on the boat. And then I've done it before where I'm like, okay, you grab the camera, film it, and we're going to do this, whereas if there's only 2 of us, I mean, I'm like, we got to do this. We'll get the camera later and talk about it. So there's been a few things like, storms coming through and like this whole thing, I'm sure we'll get to it or whatever. But, when my boat was damaged back in November of this last year, Coast Guard showing up and stuff like that. But I mean, I had to manage the boat instead of grab a camera. I did film as much as I could, but I was actually solo at the time. So it was even that much harder to do. So that would definitely something like that would be adjusting for weather, adjusting sails, or like when you're dealing with an emergency and you can't always film it.
So what happened with this disaster? How did this? Because you mentioned earlier that when things really go south, it's a combination of things. What piled up for you here?
Well, so it was supposed to be a 36-hour sail from Norfolk, Virginia, down around to Beaufort, North Carolina. My boat, there is it's called the Intercoastal Waterway where you can kind of cut through the land basically on a man-made waterway. But my boat doesn't fit in that. It's too tall for the bridges. So I had to go on the outside around Cape Hatteras, which Cape Hatteras is, I call it the graveyard of the Atlantic. There's hundreds of boats out there because the weather can get really rough really quick. And I thought I had a pretty good weather window. And for the first 24 hours, I did have a very good window. And then the wind picked up about 10, 15 knots more than forecast. And it was just really rough. But I was making it. I was okay. And then I had 14 miles left to go to Beaufort. And as I turn because I was sailing. And so then I start the motor up because then I have 14 miles to go basically straight into the wind. So you can't sail into the wind. So I turned on the motor, and then unbeknownst to me, the anchor had, because it was so rough, had one of those secondary standby anchor had come out of its mount and actually dropped while I was sailing. So it was dragging behind the boat. And when I turned the motor on, the road, because it was my secondary one, if it was chain, I don't know what would have happened, but it was because it was Dyneema, which is really, really strong rope. And it got caught in the prop and seized the prop, which then I got a 135 horsepower motor turning against that transmission, and it just cooked that transmission. The transmission just got so hot that it burned up all the water lines and all the electrical lines going in the engine bay through there, and which started flooding the engine bay. And then, I lost. Luckily, I still had power to the two systems that I needed power to: my navigation equipment and the autopilot. And if those had failed, or even if this, because I have hydraulic steering on the boat, if it had burned through that hydraulic steering line too, I wouldn't have been able to control the boat. I would have been calling the Coast Guard a lot earlier than I did. And so, it's blowing 35 to 40 knots out there, and you got the seas to go along with it. And then I don't have a motor anymore, and it's 14 miles to land, but you got to sail at least 60 degrees, 45 degrees, true, but 60 degrees apparent. Anyway, but about 60 degrees off the wind. So you're not making much headway towards your destination. You have to zigzag back and forth. And so I made it to within 6 miles of land, and then at that point I've been up for like 48 hours, and I was still taking on a little water in the engine bay. So I called the Coast Guard, and they came out and actually towed me in to land. And it ended up causing about $100,000 in damage because there was it submerged all the batteries, it submerged the generator, it submerged the inverter charger, submerged the engine basically. And then of course there's the damage caused by the fouled prop and the transmission burning up and all that. So it was a bad day. But they towed me in, and then and I'm still dealing with insurance. They are denying the claim because of basically jurisdictional stuff. They're saying that when I bought my policy, I was in the Caribbean, and they were only insuring me for the Caribbean, not the Atlantic. So we're dealing with that, but so they didn't cover that. So basically, it was a bad day, and a lot of different things led up to it.
What would you have done if you hadn't been able to contact the Coast Guard? Well,
I do have basically 3 ways of communication. I was only 14 miles offshore, and then by the time I called them, I was 6. But say I needed to call them when I was 14 miles offshore. I do have a radio, although I forgot that one burned up. It wasn't working. But I did have a portable handheld radio. It may or may not have reached that far, but there were other boats in the area that would have definitely heard me, and they could have relayed that to the Coast Guard. I also have a satellite phone, which, satellite phone, right? And then I do have like one of those, it's not a Garmin Spot, but it's an inReach. It's like a GPS locator, but you can text with it. So I could have contacted them anyways there. So, and then they were,
they were awesome.
They just came out and basically saved the day.
Can I ask a probably stupid question as it relates to the insurance thing? They only cover you in a certain area of water. I mean, the whole planet is water. I don't understand. I don't understand. Like with sailing, right? It's like it seems as though you buy insurance for a boat, and then the point of the boat is to use it to go places on water.
To do boating?
Right.
So what line are they drawing between like this area of water and that? I don't get it.
Yeah. I agree with you. And so I hope my lawyer does too. I mean, I have to get, it's $100,000 claim, and, they don't want to pay it. Right. I can't do say too much more about it right now, because everything's still pending, but, it's so it makes kind of sense depending on where you are. So I bought my policy for the Caribbean, which is actually more expensive than, say, the East Coast of the U.S. because there's more storms in the Caribbean, right? And so it just never occurred to me that I needed to update my policy, because I left because of COVID. Like I was in the Caribbean when COVID hit, and then so we were locked down on the Virgin Islands for 3 months, and then we had to get out of there for hurricane season. My original plan was to go down to Grenada, but because that's technically out of the hurricane area, and but Grenada was still closed down and locked down. So then the only other option was go back to the East Coast of the USA, which I did. And then that they said, I mean, I even told them I did it, which is anyway, so they're saying that the policy doesn't apply to the Atlantic East Coast. So we're working on it.
Yeah. Jeez.
But the viewers really came through and helping me out with the pay-per-view video about that. So that worked. So basically what I did is I put kind of like a little short teaser video on it, like explaining what happened or saying a general a synopsis of it, basically. But it was only like a 5-minute video. And then I made a 35-minute video basically documenting that whole 48 hours. And, I did a pay-per-view. I just said, okay, whatever you guys, $1, $5, $10, whatever you want to do. So they could choose the amount they wanted, whatever they thought was worth it, and had over 10,000 people do it. So,
wow,
basically, yeah.
That's nuts.
And so, and still, adding, another 100 or so a day or something. Sorry.
Is the pay-per-view thing through Patreon?
No. Sorry, one second. Yeah. Talking too much. No, I had my web designer basically kind of make a platform there that it was through Donor Box. Okay. And yeah, really helped out. Man, sorry.
I don't think we've talked to anybody who has employed a model like that. There's some systems that have kind of different series of paywalls. Like I know Patreon works with a company that does this so that you can release content to people on certain tiers and not others. And, that's fine. But they've already gotten a ticket for the show, right? Mm-hmm. It's just a question of how high level that ticket is and what it unlocks. What you just described is just straight up get access to this thing and pay what you want. And that's a really neat model. And I'm surprised that other people don't do it occasionally.
Right. Well, I got the idea from another another show. They were doing something similar, and it worked out pretty well for them. So I was like, why not? The main thing is I wanted to be able to let the people decide what amount they wanted to do. And that was the hard part, is finding a paywall that would accept that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I remember Radiohead, I think, being the first band to do that. That was like a big thing. I don't know.
Right.
Like 20 years ago at this point, but they released some album, Hail to the Thief or something, where it was like, yeah, pay whatever you want, with the idea being like, some people will pay $1, some people will pay $200. Who knows? Right. When I worked in the restaurant industry, I remember asking what the head waitress at the restaurant where I worked, because she had just gotten stiffed on a bill, there was no tip, and she wasn't upset about that, and I was a busboy at the time, and I thought she should be upset, and I didn't understand why she wasn't mad. She just got stiffed on this $150 dinner bill, and her response was, it'll even out. These people stiff me and these people over tip, and at the end, I pretty much make out good, and I'm not upset about it. So I was like, all right, that makes a lot of sense.
Well, yeah, if you put it at, okay, it's $5, then everybody's just going to do $5. If you put it whatever you feel it's worth it to you, there'll be some people that want to be really generous and help out, and then they will.
Mm-hmm. It's called Donor Box.
Mm-hmm. They take, I believe, 1.5%. And then, of course, Stripe takes 3%. So it costs like 4.5% to do the whole thing, because Stripe's or PayPal.
Right.
Sure. Somebody's got to process those payments, especially if they're coming from all over the world. That can get a little bit tricky. But it really is important to note that people want to help. They really people that YouTubers I talk to are sometimes uncomfortable with doing things like opening a Patreon or asking for a little fundraising thing to fix something, to get an absolutely necessary upgrade. But the truth is that giving people an option to contribute to what you do is something that a lot of people desperately want. You're actually helping them by giving that avenue. I think I've mentioned this before, but when I was young, my brother was very sick, and people brought over food to the house. And at a certain point, the freezer was completely full, and we could not store any more food. And I remember my mom saying we would love, it was this plate of lasagna. It's like, we would love to do this, but we literally cannot eat it and we cannot store it.
Right.
We're so sorry. And the woman was really upset. And she said, please just take it. Even if you throw it away after I leave, I just want to feel like I'm doing something and helping. And that was an extreme example, but I've seen that over the last nearly 30 years now play out in so many ways, so many different ways, where people desperately want opportunities to help people they like. And
Sure.
That extends to YouTube. The channels they enjoy watching, they want to contribute to it. They want to be part of what continues its success, grows the channel, and makes the content they love just keep coming. And so, anybody who's listening who has their own artistic pursuit, whatever it is, don't feel weird about asking people for help, because a lot of them really do want to help you.
Absolutely. I mean, with Patreon, especially when a YouTube channel is starting out, I mean, you're not, it'll be, oh man, I mean, nowadays the monetization's on YouTube's a lot better than it was like 5 years ago. But I mean, it'll be years before you're earning enough on the ad revenue to really fund the channel. Yeah. So that's why you really need the patrons. And and if the patrons, I mean, if they feel like they're getting $5 worth of content, great.
Yeah. What's it cost to see a movie now?
Yeah, like $20.
Well, when you used to be allowed to leave the house, what was it?
Yeah.
So $20, if you're getting popcorn, a drink, and the time and expense of going to do it, well, look, you're getting like 90 minutes, maybe 2 hours of content for $20. That's $10 an hour.
Yeah.
It's perfectly fair to drop $5 on 35 minutes of really good stuff that you like, especially when you know that it's going for a purpose. There's a little bit of a cause behind it.
Well, and that person needs that $5 a lot more than like Disney does.
Right. Yeah,
that's right.
Exactly.
Disney doesn't need your $5. They'll be just fine for sure. But look, that's the story of this podcast. I mean, our patrons have been invaluable in keeping this podcast going, because just having their support roll in every month allows us to pay to have the episodes edited, allows us to pay to have the SoundCloud account and everything else that goes into the plugins that we need, to make it sound good. Costs money. Everything costs money. So, it has been, not that I want to spend too much time slurping Patreon, because there's a lot of reasons that we are not happy with them.
Yeah.
But I would spend all day slurping our patrons, because they are the reason the show continues, and your patrons were the reason that you kept sailing and doodling and making content for the people who like watching it.
Absolutely. I mean, if without them, I would have, I would have ran out of money and had to turn back and do something different, So I'm very grateful for
You mentioned it taking a long time to get AdSense to a point where it's really helping. Well, I understand that your content is, not terribly controversial, but
right.
Some people just, it's the ultimate crapshoot on whether their video is going to have ads on it,
right?
At all, right? And so somebody who we talked to, Sean Malone, he has a channel called Out of Frame, where he looks at TV and movies and talks about kind of current issues as the themes are reflected in some of those movies. And so by definition, he has to mention the occasional political thing. He has to mention some historical things. We talked to Drew Dernill about this a little bit, where if you're talking about history things, you're going to have to talk about things like wars.
Mm-hmm.
And the moment you do that, the AdSense hammer starts to swing, and you generally have no idea whether a video is going to be full monetization, limited monetization, age restricted. It's absolutely nuts. So, depending on AdSense is a very dicey proposition. Patreon and the community behind you, they don't decide month by month whether your content should be allowed to make money.
Right.
It's there or it isn't. And that's a nice, consistent thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, people say all the time, why don't you talk about this or something political or something on your thing? I'm like, number one, that's not what my show's about. And number two, it is like that. I got to think about, okay, I can't, for monetization reasons and stuff like that, I can't do it. And then also, I'm kind of selling an escape from all that. You know what I mean? And so my people don't want to see it. And like, I hate it when actors, they get popular and then they're like, okay, now listen to my political beliefs. I'm like, no, I want you to entertain me, not tell me what your thoughts are. You know what I mean? It's just.
Yeah. I totally hear that. And then you get like that certain percentage of people who are upset for not using your quote unquote platform. But
right.
It's like, I didn't start doing this for a platform.
Right.
I started doing this for every reason other than to tell other people how to live their lives. So like, I totally hear that for sure. We haven't had a vacation or I should say travel YouTuber, and the circles that I've run in, at VidCon and stuff, I think I've only like literally ever encountered one by accident at like a round table at VidCon. I was randomly placed with this girl whose name I don't remember at this point, but which is no slight to her. I don't remember what I had for breakfast, but
years ago too.
This was several years ago. But what I didn't get to ask her that I'd love to ask you is if the traveling content stuff ever feels like a job in a way where you're not getting to really enjoy what is typically considered an escape. Like you said, it's supposed to be an escape for people, but is it an escape for you, or are you on the clock all the time?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm on the clock a lot. But I always take at least 1 or 2 days a week. And no matter where I am, I'm like, okay, this is not a filming day. You know what? I'm just going to go enjoy the beach. I'm going to go enjoy this. I'm not going to film today. Hiring the editor has helped because I was getting burned out. I mean, it was just so much work. Number one, maintaining, doing the editing, doing the filming, and then you got to maintain a boat and deal with all the logistics of travel and all that. So there's a lot to it. It does, like you say, it will occasionally feel like I don't get to experience as much because I'm kind of looking through the camera instead of opening my eyes and doing that. But that's kind of what everybody's doing these days with their cell phones, right? They're out somewhere and they're videoing it and looking at their camera, instead of that. But yeah, I try to take at least a day, at least a couple days a week where I'm just like, today's a not filming day. So we're just going to enjoy the day. So, but it can,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I have a really practical question that was that the end of the line on your question, Kevin, because this is such a hard right turn that I don't want to derail your thoughts on it.
Yeah, no. Because just generally speaking, like I'm not a vacation person, but I know a lot of people like I'm weird though. I know a lot of people love vacation and love traveling. So that has just always interested me. Is obviously you have to love that to begin with to get into making content.
Sure.
And if that love goes away because of it turning into a job.
Well, yeah, but I mean, there's so many times when I've been at anchor in some beautiful, island with just crystal clear water, and you got a white beach and palm trees, and you got a good looking girl with you and all that, and you're looking around and going, yeah, okay, this is pretty cool. And, YouTube has made that possible. So I can't get too mad about it. You know what I mean?
Okay. Yeah. Makes sense.
It's funny, people use the phrase "live in the dream," and it's always ironic.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I woke up and there was a foot of snow in the driveway, so I shoveled that, living the dream. But yeah, it's not so ironic with you. But when you had this idea and then decided that it was going to be a thing, that you really were going to do it, what did the people around you say? Friends, family, anybody like that?
They thought I was crazy. My mom thought I was going to die. Yeah, my dad really didn't like it either. I mean, he was a former pilot as well. He was retired at the time. And they just thought, basically I'm throwing my life away or something, and, here we are 5 years later and, arguably the show's pretty successful and it's opened more doors than I would have ever had, doing the traditional route. So, I mean, there were some people that thought I was crazy or, he's just going to do it for a phase and then he'll come back and start over or whatever, which, I mean, that was kind of the plan B if it happened, but but I mean, really doing any kind of, whether it's going sailing and going cruising or even starting a YouTube channel, there are people that can do it in their spare time and make it a success. But really, if you want to be successful in YouTube, you got to go. Because you need to be making, especially when you're first starting out, you need to be making content every week. And, so you really got to either find that extra time to do it or just be like, okay, I'm going to go for it. And hopefully I make it, you know what I mean? And it's a risk, but so is life. Everything in life is.
Spotify for podcasters, the Spotify dedicated account on Twitter that's just for podcasting stuff, put out a tweet today saying, hey podcasters, what would you tell people just starting out? Something like that. And it's kind of just what you said. Like the big secret to all content stuff is to actually make that content and then keep making it.
Right.
It's like the dumbest thing in the world, but that's, nothing else matters if you're not churning out that content. There's nothing to tweak or improve or build a community around if it's not coming with some regularity.
Well, yeah, no, I've met, somebody asks what you do or something like, I'm a YouTuber or whatever. And invariably they'll say something like, oh yeah, I tried doing that. I made 3 or 4 episodes and I just wasn't seeing a return on it. And like, well, you only made 3 or 4 episodes, try 30 or 40. Yeah. And if you're still not seeing a return, then okay, maybe try something different. You know what I mean? But yeah, 3 or 4.
Imagine talking to a writer and somebody, they're like, yeah, I tried being a writer, but I wrote like 10 or 20 pages and it just wasn't working out.
Right? I was going to say, I wrote like 10 words and they were like not really cool. So I had such an awkward conversation. Matt, I told you about this with a person who I was introduced to. How do I delicately, it doesn't matter. I had a meeting I wasn't expecting and shouldn't have had with a person. And long story short, she started telling me about how she wanted to be a content creator and wasn't sure which platform to start using. And she, has an Instagram, but it's not going very well. And she's thinking about YouTube, but like maybe TikTok and blah, 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 blah. And it was that exact thing. It's like, stop thinking about where your, content is going to be the best or for you, or where you're going to get the best return, or like you just have to make stuff because you're into it and you like it and you like the journey. You like the iterative process of seeing a thing uploaded and getting some kind of feedback, even if it's from 3 people.
Right.
That's cool. Yeah. That's fine. There was a long time where I first started doing YouTube in, 2006 or whatever. And like 4 of my buddies would watch my video. And that was awesome. That was really cool. To make a thing, show it to 4 friends and have them laugh. Like that was enough for a really long time. And if you're not into that, then I don't know, do something else, probably.
Do something else. Yeah. And there's occasionally I'll do a seminar type thing, where, there was one in Australia that we mentioned, Tom Videoger, who's quick with the links. I actually met him there, and Mini Kudos, who had a couple hundred subscribers, and now has 65,000 or something, and was a guest on the show. some people clearly do not like all the stuff that Kevin just mentioned. They don't like everything that Bobby described half an hour ago. That's like, yeah, you compile all of this footage and then you sort it out into the 5 verticals it needs to be in. And when you have 80 files on the GoPro that need to be completely reconstructed with date and time, you have to sit down and do it. Mm-hmm. And then you sketch it out to send to your editor, and you do this every 5 days and then take a day off, and you do it over and over and over for 5-6 years.
Yeah.
Not a whole lot of people are built for that. And even some of the ones who are don't like it. And it's something that you want to say to the occasional person who clearly doesn't like that stuff. You're like, have you just thought of leaving this room and just never thinking about YouTube again? But you can't say that, to an event they've come to for YouTube. Well, but the reality is that, yeah, they're looking for something to pop and in a way that it probably won't.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. Like, on Vsauce there, your most recent video, they watch, they see you talking to the camera and all that. They don't realize all the writing that went into that. And, all the, many takes you did, and setting up the lighting, setting up the gear, sending it to the editor, talking back and forth for, hours or whatever, getting it done. Because it looks easy. It looks like you just sat in front of the camera and talked for 15 minutes, and they're like, well, I can do that. You're like, okay, you can, but it's a lot more work than it looks like,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I pitched this idea on a podcast. I don't remember with who, but somewhat recently, where we were talking about YouTube Rewind being killed, probably for good. I would think at this point it's probably just over. And what I would love to see is a documentary every year, like a really nice documentary where not YouTube, but YouTube hires an actual documentarian film crew to follow, like, I don't know, 5 YouTubers. Mm-hmm. And, one of them is you. One of them is Sailing Doodles. One of them is Physics Girl. One of them is David Dobrik. And one of them is Many Kudos, whatever. Like a nice swath of different types of content creators for a year. Yeah. And then at the end of the year, they put together the documentary. Like, who wouldn't watch that? Because you would get what we're talking about, and you'd get to see it I think in a method, or in a medium that's a lot more has more mass appeal, and it would be more persuasive than us talking about it on a podcast.
Sure. I mean, they get to, a picture sells 1,000 words, right? I mean, it's you can actually see it and experience it, and then all the the hardships that not the hardships, but all the links that everybody goes through to make it happen. I mean, like I rented a hotel room tonight just so I could talk to you guys, so I could get internet. Because the internet in the marina is terrible, and then the cell phone service here in Puerto Rico is not very good either. So I just wanted to make sure I got a good, nice connection, so we didn't drop you.
Yeah. We were talking about that before we hit record. All the people who were hanging out waiting for the start, we're hearing that. We were talking about internet service. Mm-hmm. What do you have when you're out on the water? What contact is there?
Well, okay, now that I have an editor, normally I would just upload the footage on Dropbox into a shared folder, right? And it's already set to go and he's got it. Well, when you're out on the water, basically, you don't have a wired Wi-Fi or a Wi-Fi, so you're either using, the options would be satellite based, which is ridiculously expensive. Obviously Starlink will be changing that, but the traditional, satellite internet is, number one, pretty slow. Relatively slow, but it's also like $5,000 to $10,000 a month for that. So
that's a lot.
Yeah, that's a lot. So basically the main way is through cellular data. When you're in the States, we're getting screwed in the States. We have like the most expensive cell phone plans of the world. You go to go to Asia or in the Bahamas, you get basically $1 a gigabyte for 4G LTE, whatever. And so I just get a hotspot of that, and so I'll buy 100 gigabytes at a time and upload or whatever. But so that's generally how it happens. And if I'm going to do a longer sail, more than a couple days, I just plan accordingly where I don't need to get internet access during that time. But nowadays, I'll organize the footage and I'll put it all on a 256 gigabyte SD card, and I mail that now to my family. And my mother is not very computer savvy at all, so basically I went to her computer, set up Dropbox, and then wrote out instructions like insert, click this file, move it, and so now she can do all that.
I love that. That's the greatest process I've ever heard for making YouTube videos, is mailing your mom an SD card and then giving her like step-by-step post-it note instructions on how to upload it so your editor can get to it. That's amazing. When I was on the ship, the Royal Caribbean ship,
right,
doing the solar eclipse video, I was very, very distraught learning that the internet connection out at sea was not very robust, because of the fact that, as you may realize, a lot of people were making solar eclipse videos for YouTube, and the faster you could edit it and upload it, the better.
Right.
So, as I'm like 400 miles off the coast of Florida, or wherever we were exactly, unable to upload this thing for a really long time, I think that by the time we got back to the U.S., to the U.S. and uploaded, edited and uploaded that solar eclipse video, it was like 2 days after it had happened,
a couple days,
which was like such old news when it comes to an event like that. It was like, I already watched like 13 solar eclipse videos, Kevin.
It's like a Super Bowl video coming out in June.
It's like a Super Bowl video coming out Wednesday.
Right.
It's like, yeah, we saw the Super Bowl on Sunday. Thanks. I remember.
Yeah. Well, I mean, unlike, on my show, it's definitely, there's a timeline in all the videos. So like on an educational podcast or something like, or not podcast, but show, if there's a current event like that's happening right now, you can make a video of it, put it up in real time. Whereas it confuses my viewers a lot. So like, the videos that are coming out now, I filmed back in early January. So if I put a video of what I'm doing right now and put it in the middle of those videos, people get really confused and they don't understand why this is not chronological. So it is kind of an annoyance that I can't really do current event type stuff. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Just because it's that kind of show. I mean, even like a daily vlogger, right? Because they can still do it because there's not the travel vlogging industry in general. Everything's got to be sequential. So it's just another hurdle to jump.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there's a bit of a lag. That makes sense. But yeah, I mean, that's the nature of the content that you're creating. So
yeah. Well, I mean, I've been as far ahead of the videos as about 2.5, 3 months before. Some of the other sailing YouTube channels have been 6 to 9 months ahead of their videos. And
wow.
Yeah.
They could have a baby could have been born and nobody would know.
That's happened. That has happened. I'm not joking. There's all of a sudden they announce they're pregnant and then the next video the baby's born or whatever. I mean, it's because they took the 9 months off to be pregnant or whatever. Right. Yeah, no, that does happen. There's been, knock on wood, I guess. It's been a rash of babies born in the sailing genre lately. There's a bunch of them.
I mean, look, my surface level analysis here is that the number of things to do on a boat is a shorter list than in real life. So it seems like ripe territory for baby making.
Yeah. Some of the top, the top two, they definitely have had kids in the last couple of years. Yeah. But we're all a pretty good community. I mean, we at least a few of us, we all know who each other are and we're friends and we'll hang out and stuff like that in the sailing community. So it's pretty nice. It's a good group.
That's good. Yeah. The education side of YouTube is all very friendly with each other too. I wonder, is like the makeup community all bitter rivals? Like, I wonder which communities on YouTube are just full of vitriol. It's good that the sailing community is cool with each other because it makes sense that you could meet up and do videos together and collab and all of that sort of stuff. Seems like a natural fit.
Well, it is. I mean, I think in general for YouTube, it's just a mindset that you have to have personally. Like, I remember when I was first starting out, I was like, well, why? What is it? This person's video just went viral. Why didn't mine? And you're like, and you're kind of maybe bitter or you're jealous or something. And then, or, you don't want to mention their stuff because you don't want to promote them. You want to promote your own. And then you're like, once you realize that, a rising tide lifts all boats. So if another sailing channel does awesome and gets like 100 million views in a month, well, maybe I'm the recommended next on their channel sometime. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's good. If they do well, then you're bringing more viewers into the sailing genre that actually like, oh, there's people that do this. Cause like, it is on YouTube. You'll be scrolling along and you go down a rabbit hole and you're like, I had no idea people were making content like this.
Yeah. No, look, we just spoke with Drew Dernill, who does. Matt mentioned him earlier in this podcast because he does really unique content where he talks about kind of like historical Reddit memes and flags and geography and stuff like that. And he actually said that he has kind of the opposite problem where he's a bit alone. He's a bit isolated in the type of content that he makes, and that can be very detrimental because who's recommending you if you're on that island?
Well, that's the algorithm is a mysterious thing, right? I mean, who knows? And I mean, maybe it's helpful because nobody else is making content like that, so there's less competition. You know what I mean? So I mean, it's just about, and it's crazy. Like I'll have videos that I filmed 3 years ago. Like I'm having some right now that like the videos are more than 2 years old, and all of a sudden they're my most viewed videos of the day. I mean, it's just weird how YouTube will circle back to that kind of stuff.
There's got to be a nice timeless element to a lot of your content, though, right?
Yeah, I do see seasonally. Generally, this time of year, February, March, April is a good time of year for content, and the summer is as well. September, October, and November are generally pretty poor. I guess everybody's going back to school and don't have time to watch all that stuff. I don't know. Yeah. And because I have my demographics are like 75% of my stuff. My viewers are 45 plus.
Oh, that's
really
wild. That's radically different from anybody we've ever talked to.
Yeah. Well, because you got the sailing genre. It doesn't interest a lot of 20-year-olds, but your 50-year-old that's dreaming about retiring in the next couple of years, they're looking at it,
Right. Yeah.
Which I guess that helps with AdSense too. Cause like, your CPM, I mean, the people that watch your videos are the rich guys with money, so, that kind of helps your CPM.
Yeah. I mean, if you can afford a boat, I mean, you probably, are having some pretty high dollar, ads thrown your way. It's like, I remember, years ago reading an article about the ads on Mad Men. That show was it on AMC? Mad Men was not a lot of people watched that show. It was a niche show. It wasn't like
at the time,
Everybody Loves Raymond or whatever. It didn't get 40 million viewers, but it had such a rich audience that they raked it in with their like Mercedes-Benz commercials. And like watch commercials. I don't know, Rolex commercials or whatever. So I don't know. Maybe eventually I'll have to get into the boating game.
Hey, do it, man! Come on down to the boat. We'll give you a spare cabin for a while and have fun.
Hey, have you had anybody do that top tier for 6 months and go sailing with you?
Yeah. Yes. There's one guy we're trying to coordinate it now. So yes. I was hoping to try to do something in March and April, but we'll see how COVID goes.
Oh, right.
But yeah, I've had one guy do it, and then I've done it a couple times where I did just as a perk, I did a random drawing from patrons to invite somebody down.
Oh, nice.
So I haven't done that in a while though. Just haven't.
They were cool. It wasn't awkward or anything.
Yeah, they're pretty cool. And somewhat in the beginning, I actually would especially when trying to make ends meet. I on my second boat, it was actually doing a delivery. So I met a guy while I was just screwing around in Thailand that owned a boat, a Beneteau 50 in Canada. And he gave it to me for a year, basically to deliver it to Thailand. And so to help make ends meet, we would like lease out a cabin to somebody for a week or two. And so they would come down and, for $100 a day or $150 a day. And then most everybody was really cool. Only had one guy I regret having him there, but most everybody was pretty cool.
Okay, fair enough. I won't ask what went on there.
He was just an asshole.
Leave it at that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I know that we have questions from our patrons and that we'd love to ask you.
Yeah,
sure.
Because they've got questions for you. And that's one of the perks that we give to our patrons is they get to hang out in the chat while we record live with our guests and throw some questions at them. So, Matt, if you want to take that away.
Yeah, the first question is actually from me because it didn't seem to fit before now, but I really want to know this. So when you're popping along the coast, you're stopping in, I'm sure you're eating there. When you're on the water for a long stretch, what do you eat?
Well, the longest stretch I've ever done was 17 days from Mexico to French Polynesia. You have refrigerator and a freezer. And generally, you'll have fresh food for a week of that. So, and then you get, then you're in your pastas and rice and you're freezing chicken and all that. You do some fishing if you'd like. I'm not a big fisherman, but we have caught fish before while we're cruising and just brought it on board, cleaned it and ate it. Provisioning, you try to do, I'll keep 3 or 4 months worth of like canned and dried goods on the boat, just in case, you know what I mean? And then, you generally once a week or so go to the markets wherever you are. Sometimes, you're not getting the best stuff. Like in the Bahamas, it's pretty hard and very expensive to get decent produce, because some of those islands are pretty remote, and they get a mail boat once a week that brings their vegetables and stuff because they don't grow anything locally. And then, once you're like in the South Pacific and all that, I mean, you're going to the local farmer market and buying whatever you need. And then they have stores like that. So, I mean, you can generally, there's storage everywhere on boats. So under every chair or under every seat, there's storage, you know what I mean? So they're under the floorboards, there's storage. Especially going to places like French Polynesia and the Bahamas, I definitely stock up about as much beer as I can carry on the boat because that's really expensive there. That's the hard part. Yeah.
So let's see. There are a couple of these that are kind of should be grouped together. But as I do that in my head here, Dan, who does a fair bit to make this show happen, has a very practical question about that SD card that you ship out. Do you always copy that before it goes out? Like, is there a failure rate on damaged in shipping? Like, any problems with that?
I haven't had any problems yet. But yeah, I mean, I don't. I keep, I have a slew of portable hard drives, and I have lost one of those before. Got damaged, but yeah, I mean, I don't put my only copy in the mail. I mean, so if it does get lost, I can just upload it to a new card and send it. But yeah, I mean, I think I've got, I don't know. I got about 6 of those SD cards that, if I need them.
Rotate. Yeah. So something that is a major part of your channel that we really didn't bring up before now. This is from Monsieur Chinchilla is about you having dogs on the boat. That's a substantial part of the content. What was the process like getting the dogs to adapt to sailing life?
It was hard. Maverick, so 2 Labradoodles named Maverick and Goose, obviously being a pilot.
Sure.
Maverick took to it right away. I mean, he had no problems in it, even when the seas were rough. Goose, on the other hand, he never really liked it that much. So they're not with me anymore. So we were sailing last spring in February, actually. It was January. We were in the Bahamas, and Maverick got sick, and he was pretty sick, like coughing a lot, and there was a little blood in his cough. And and we were in Georgetown. There's no vets. There's no, CT machine or no X-ray machines. And we actually had a patron fly down in his private airplane and picked us up and flew us back to Florida so we could take him to a vet. And
oh wow,
they X-rayed him, and unfortunately, it was cancer. And he ended up passing away. So then he flew us back to Florida where I did that. And then when I got the bad news, I rented a car and we drove straight back to Dallas. And then I was with him for about a week or so until we had to put him down, unfortunately. So that was really cool of our patron to do that, because otherwise, I don't know what we were going to do. It can be, and so yeah, I miss him a lot. And then so when I flew back with him, we brought Goose too, and Goose is a bit older now too. They're brothers, so he's 10 and a half. And I didn't feel it was right to bring him back on a boat when he his hips are getting bad. So he's with my parents now.
Sure.
And unfortunately, he's not doing real well right now. I'm actually maybe going to have to fly back to Dallas in the next couple days and see if we got maybe. Anyway, it's a tough thing, losing a pet. They're like family. So
yeah, that's terrible. I do have a larger question though about you on the boat with medical stuff, because having the start to all of this be a significant life change after a stroke at a very young age. You don't hear a whole lot of people in their 30s having strokes, aneurysms, things like that. It does happen, but it's not an everyday thing. Seems like you can only do so much to prep for emergencies. Right. On a boat. Is there any, how do you do this, knowing that that a significant problem can pop up out of nowhere that you'd have to deal with? How do you do it?
Well, yeah, that was definitely a bit of maybe a little bit of an anxiety, especially at first when I was doing it. But the type of stroke I had was a dural AV fistula. Especially, it happened because I had a malformation of blood vessels. It wasn't like because of a clot.
Okay.
And so the doctors said it's no more likely to happen to me again than anybody else. Right. It could have been just I was born like that, or I could have hit my head when I was playing football when I was 12. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So. There is some concern on that, but and generally the cruising community, the people that are out sailing are generally somewhat older. And so that is a thing you have to think of. Now there is insurance you can get. There's one of the insurers is called Dan, but it's for divers, but it works for sailors and stuff too. It's like $250 a year. And it's emergency rescue service. So wherever you are in the world, they will come get you. Obviously if you're in the middle of the ocean, you're kind of screwed. But if you're, sure. If you're in the Bahamas or in the Virgin Islands or something like that, and you're having an issue and it would take you, you have to go to the hospital right then. They'll send somebody to get you, take you to the nearest medical facility to get you stabilized. And then they will put you on an airplane to, your hospital of choosing. Now then, obviously, if you're having a heart attack or something, that's not much of a help, but if you've got like a broken leg or something like that, you know what I mean? That's kind of what that's for. As far as...
So there's some degree of just having to roll the dice on this.
Exactly. But if you roll the dice if you go walk down the street, go for a jog, ride your bike down the street, you know what I mean? It's just what risk, I hate to quote, what is it? Brody from, what is that? Oh, what's that stupid surf movie? But, whatever. It's like, if you want the ultimate, you got to be willing to pay the ultimate price. What movie is that? That's
Point Break?
Point Break. Thank you.
That's our first Point Break reference on the podcast, which I'm excited about.
Yeah. Bodie, there it is. Yeah. Yeah. So, there is that.
Good.
It is concerned, but you just gotta, heck, until the last 100 years, that wouldn't be an issue because it wouldn't have mattered,
Sure. Yeah. So there's another kind of general practical question here that comes from Tom. What is the normal day in the life of Bobby like at this point?
Well, so I just got a new boat right now, so I've been working on that. I haven't been filming it too much. There's a lot of sailing channels that will film a lot of their boat repairs and all that. Mine's more of a lifestyle thing. It's not, if you want to learn how to fix something on your boat, there's a lot better videos than I can make on it. So mine is just maybe more the lifestyle. So lately I've just been working on the boat. Anytime you get a new boat, there's lots of stuff to upgrade and repair and get how you want it. So that takes a few weeks. I'm hoping to set sail again next week. And so that will be, get up in the morning, it's depends on where we are. Like if we're anchored off some island, whatever, get up in the morning, make a cup of tea, sit there and just relax and enjoy the view. You're at this beautiful island, do that. And then, maybe film a little bit of that. And then if we're moving to a different anchorage that day, then, check the weather and start filming some of the preps to get ready, and then film getting underway. And I've got 2 friends coming down next week that'll be joining on the boat. Actually, one's a returning crew member. Well, they're both returning crew members. So that'll be nice, and we'll just set off and go. And then just, anytime there's something interesting, I pick up a camera. I don't really plan out what I'm going to film. I'll plan out certain activities we're going to do, but I'm not going to plan out like a script or anything. Although, when certain things will do, like we're getting underway, I'll put the drone up, fly the drone as we're pulling up the anchor or something. And then if the conditions are right and it's calm enough, fly the drone while we're actually sailing, which it can be pretty tricky trying to get the drone back. Haven't lost any yet, but that's why it's got to be the right conditions.
I can see how you might.
And that's why, and I definitely, I got the Phantom 4 because it's got the big landing gear. Because trying to catch that on the boat can be hard. And then, fly the drone when we make it to the new anchorage, just kind of give everybody the lay of the land and all that, of what they're seeing. And then go explore the island. We generally pick an anchorage or an island because there's something interesting to do. And so, I'll have an idea of what those, like maybe there's a rainforest, or there's a good snorkeling spot, or there's, this place is known for, nurse sharks or something, and go explore it.
You mentioned earlier being in Puerto Rico now. Mm-hmm. One of our longtime patrons and chat members here now is Marco. He's in Puerto Rico himself, and he wants to know what your favorite thing about the island is.
Oh, man. The first thing that popped into my head was Culebra, which is actually another island just east of Puerto Rico, but it's under Puerto Rican territory. And it's just got one of the most beautiful beaches in the world, the Flamenco Beach, and it's just gorgeous. It used to be a training place for the Navy and military. They would put tanks on the beach and shoot shells at them and stuff. Kind of interesting. And then, the Puerto Rican people are just really nice. They're very, any excuse for a party, and obviously with COVID, things are a little tame. But, I can't, when once they lift the restrictions like COVID, this place is going to blow up. They're just going to go crazy. And I'm actually making Puerto Rico my home. Like, I'm moving my residence here for multiple reasons. Number one, it's an easy launch point to the rest of the Caribbean. Sure. It's still America, so you can get anything you want, even from Amazon. It may take a couple more days, but you can still get it. Yeah. The cost of living is pretty cheap, but the main reason are the taxes. There he goes. He's got a picture of one of the tanks on the beach there in Culebra. That's pretty cool. But the tax, so the corporate tax rate, so you guys might want to think about this, is 4%. And
that's fairly friendly.
Yeah, and the federal income tax is, I think, for certain people can be as little as 0. So the taxes here are really nice.
All right. Well, we'll see you in Puerto Rico.
Right. You actually have to be here for 6 months and a day to make it count. There's a couple other ways of doing it. You can also do no closer connection, which means you can't own or rent anything like a house or motorhome or anything in the mainland. Anything you own or rent has to be here in Puerto Rico. And you have to, move your company here, which you could do, and you have to have more than one employee. It's kind of complicated, but you can do it.
That's wild. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we were talking just a week or two ago about all the solutions that are popping up for people who do have careers that are kind of placeless.
Right.
Like YouTubers can kind of be anywhere, and places like Estonia have been extremely friendly to digital workers. And I think now that more people are working from home and working away from a traditional office, I think that stuff is going to absolutely flourish in coming years.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's changed the way everybody's done business. I think,
Yeah.
And we'll see what happens with travel and all that. I mean, once COVID recovers, because I mean, I don't know what it's going to do, the airline industry and stuff, but I mean, a lot of the business travel is, most of the business travel is not happening. And people are like, wait a minute, I don't have to spend $2,500 a month on airline tickets. We can just do this over Zoom, So
Yeah, no, it's changing a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, no, it is. So on another trend that we're seeing, I don't know how this started. Maybe it was a TikTok thing, but sea shanties are a big deal now. As of the last couple months, it's really a pretty heavy trend. Even the Trailer Park Boys released one of their own originals the other day.
What is a sea shanty? Is that like
a sea shanty? The centuries old sailing songs. Do you have any sailing music that you prefer?
Oh, for sure. I mean, when we were going to French Polynesia, I probably listened to Southern Cross by Crosby, Stills and Nash like every day, like multiple times a day, because that's what that's about. For sure that one. There's a bunch of stuff. There's a bunch of like pretty good like kind of reggae type stuff by the Stick Figures and stuff that seems to be, and a couple of those other bands and stuff, or like what's that? Sticky Fingers and stuff. They do some stuff kind of like sailing based areas, Crosby, Stills, Nash. And then, there's a bunch of them. I kind of, you got there's a whole genre. I guess now they're calling it sea shanties, but it used to be yacht rock, right?
Yacht rock. Yeah. That's, I think there's a Sirius XM station called Yacht Rock that my brother listens to when he's on his probably 12-foot boat. And I think he does it kind of ironically, but it's just good, fun music.
Oh, and of course, it's a non-skip song, and whenever it comes up on random on playing something on the phone. But Lonely Island, I'm on a boat. You got to listen to that every now and again.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, listening to like yacht rock, ironically. It starts out ironically for like 30 seconds, and then 31 seconds into it, you're like, I like it. It's awesome. I'm actually having a great time.
Absolutely.
It's good stuff. The yacht part is the ironic part for him because he's on this thing that fits him, a motor, and a fishing pole.
Oh, hey, man.
Right.
Not much better.
Not much of a yacht.
That's one of my favorite things to do, especially, especially if I'm out on anchor somewhere. That's what I do. That's a routine almost every day that I don't miss. Is right about sunset, maybe pour like a glass of bourbon or get a beer. Sometimes I'll smoke a cigar, put on some tunes and watch the sunset go down, and pretty much do that every day. And I mean, it's definitely a mental reset being able to do that. It kind of puts your priorities right. Like people get too caught up on what's going on Facebook, and all that, or Instagram or whatever. And you gotta enjoy your life a little bit, enjoy the moment.
There's actually a question about that, about whether you had rum on the boat at all times. Is bourbon your spirit of choice?
If I'm smoking a cigar or something, I go with the bourbon. I mean, I do have rum. It's not like super common on the boat. I mean, I'm more of a beer and wine guy. I don't do too much hard liquor. Mm-hmm. We stock the boat with everything. I mean, because and because like I kind of go back before. I mean, like I try to if I'm going out, especially in the Bahamas or something, or in the Virgin Islands or wherever. Sure, we'll go to and Don Q is a good rum for sure. If we're going to go to a restaurant or go ashore, go to the beach, something, yeah, sure, we'll go and buy a drink there or something. But as far as on the boat, I mean, when I leave Puerto Rico, I might be gone for 3 or 4 months cruising around, all the islands, the Virgin Islands, St. Martin, St. Thomas, and St. Bart's, all that stuff. The goal would be to not have to reprovision alcohol on the boat until I get back to Puerto Rico. So like 2 or 3 months worth of booze on there, just because, I mean, a case of beer in Puerto Rico is like $19. A case of beer in St. Martin is $50, or more.
Okay. Yeah. It's a difference.
Yeah. Wow.
I mean, in the Bahamas, a case of beer in like, Nassau is $45. Now, if you go to like, not Yost, that's Virgin Islands, but I'm gone blank on the name. But some of the islands out there, it'll be like $70 for a case of beer, and it's just really expensive.
Wow, this is a trick that I used back in the day. About 10 years ago, I kind of country hopped for a few years. And one of the ways to determine which, you make a list of plausible places, and there might be 5 or 6 or 7, and nothing to really decide which one to get a ticket to. Well, an amazing thing is to go to a website like Pint Price, which tracks the price of a pint of beer worldwide. And there's such a strong correlation between cost of living being very low and cheap beer that you can say, well, hey, Bulgaria is half the price of Greece right now. You want to avoid the places where a pint of beer is 550 euros. And go to some place where you can get a beer and a sausage for like $1.50. But yeah, using alcohol and beer to track general cost of living for destinations, amazing trick. I recommend it to everyone.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100% on that one. Yeah.
So do you have any unexplainables? This is really interesting. So the way the question was posed here is, have you encountered any Krakens, mermaids, or other piratey events?
No.
I feel like you may not have, but has there been anything that's been weird or unexplainable or just amazing?
Sometimes, like I remember crossing the Pacific Ocean. I mean, we were at one point more than 1,000 miles from any point of land. And you still see birds out there sometimes. And you're like, where did this bird come from? How did it, where does it rest?
Yeah.
And it's just like, and you'll see them out there. But I don't know how they do it. But then of course it is kind of amazing because they're all attracted to the boat because, for anywhere it looks, all it sees is water. And all of a sudden there's some kind of object on the water and it comes and checks us out and it'll keep on going. No. It freaks you out when you see some sea snakes or something. It was crazy sailing through like Indonesia and places like that. And you're out there pretty far from land and you'll see a snake in the water and you're like, and those things are pretty poisonous too. So you want to, I think it's pretty hard for them to actually bite you, but it can happen.
That seems kind of terrifying, like something that Kevin would have made a video about a few years ago about the combination of human terrors in one animal.
Yeah. Well, I did a video of Niue, Niue, I believe, or Nuie. I can't remember how to spell it. I'm sure Tom will have it up pretty quick. But that is known for its sea snakes, and so we did a scuba diving thing there. And during the scuba dive, I counted them. Like I put a little counter in the video, and I think we got up to like 20 sea snakes, and they were like very curious too. They would come up and like swim around you because they're just really curious things, and it would I remember the scuba diving the guide put his arm out like kind of making like a airplane type thing, and the sea snake just went and swam around his arm like 3 times and then swam off, and it was pretty sort. Actually, it wasn't I can't remember what kind it was, but they're very poisonous, but they only do it in defensive stuff, So
okay,
yeah.
So if you don't threaten them, they're unlikely to bite.
Yeah. Well, and from and it's my what I've been told. This could be an old wives' tale that like their fangs are so far back in their jaw that they can't just come up and bite you like on the thigh, right? They'd have to get you like in the webbing of your fingers or something like that, So because they're made for getting fish, right? Not for getting or stuff like that. So and they're not using it. It's mainly for killing prey, not for other stuff. So
yeah. Well, the last one that we've got here is kind of a general one, and we touched on it a little bit through the conversation. But sailing and boating is really portrayed as kind of a luxury endeavor, and kind of ultimate fun, right? As a vacation activity and getting away from everything. So how accurate is that portrayal?
It's not very accurate. Because you see, like the scene from Trading Places or whatever, they're on the yacht and, they got the bottle of champagne and, they got a butler on the thing. Okay. That's kind of what people connotate. But like my first boat, I paid $24,000 for it. So it probably cost less than most people's car. And then we were living on about $2,000 a month. And, so realistically, it's not expensive to do. And especially if you go to Asia, if you buy a boat like in Thailand and do it there, you can live really well on that boat for $1,000 a month. Because think about it, anchoring is free, right? So you're not paying rent. Generally, if the boat's set up well enough, you've got solar panels and, you're self-sufficient making power. You have a lot of boats will have a water desalinator. So like my boat has a water, so I can turn seawater into drinking water. You're basically the only expense you have is maintenance on the boat, which could be, and it varies. I mean, you probably want to budget $200 to $500 a month. And depending on what size boat you have, how old it is, and all that. And then it's just how much do you want to spend on your food and your time ashore and all that, because you don't have many other expenses. And so there's people that live on a boat for $1,000 a month, even in the Bahamas or the Florida Keys. I wouldn't do that. I mean, I always tell people the cheapest I would want to live on a boat. If I didn't have to do the YouTube thing and do all the dealing with that, right? Because that's expensive and it's, buying gear and you have to keep replacing the gear because saltwater. But if you're just going to live on it, I was telling $2,500 a month and you're living okay. If you can bump that up to $3,500 a month, you're living pretty well on the boat. Because think about it, that's $100 a day for food and alcohol and entertainment, And so it's however much you want to spend.
Yeah.
And so it's really not that bad.
If you can't get by with that.
Unfortunately, the Caribbean and the Bahamas, are the most expensive place to sail, other than maybe like French Polynesia. Actually, the Mediterranean's pretty cheap to sail, depending on where you are. And then Asia is dirt cheap to sail. So it's really not too bad. It's not as expensive as people think, for sure. And there's plenty of videos on people explaining what their monthly costs are. I think I even have done a couple of videos on it and a podcast on it too.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd recommend it if anybody's thinking about doing it. I mean, just start watching. Watch Sailing Doodles. Watch any of the other YouTube vloggers. You can find a sailing vlogger that matches your personality and your how you like to live. I mean, there are all kinds out there, and then you can just watch and see how they're doing it. And it's really it's not for everybody. I mean, you have to be pretty self-sufficient. You do need to know how to work on your boat and how to fix mechanical things on your boat and, do that. But it's pretty nice. It's very rewarding if you can do it. You get to see a lot of places that, you can do a vacation to the Bahamas where you fly into Nassau or Georgetown, or maybe you even go to one of the more remote islands where they have a resort. But there's 700 islands in the Bahamas and only 40 of them are inhabited, right? So I'm anchored off at this uninhabited island that, maybe only a couple hundred people to go to a year, and it's pretty awesome to do.
Huh.
That's crazy.
Wild.
Well, look, this was great having you on, man. I really, really am so excited because, like we said at the outset, it's so different from our usual discussion with, memers and comedians and talking about like cereal tier lists. So it was really a pleasure, and thanks to all of our patrons for hanging out with us. Thanks to Sailing Doodles patrons for allowing him to continue to do what he does, and thanks to all of our patrons for allowing us to have these great conversations. If you want to become a patron of The Create Unknown, just go to patreon.com/thecreateunknown, become a $2 tot, join the dumpster crew, become part of the infantry, or someday maybe you be part of the baby gang. That's kind of that's our upper tier, where they go. They don't necessarily go sailing with us after 6 months, but I think conceptually
after 6 months.
Do.
Yeah. After 6 months, you're eligible to go in Kevin's dimly lit studio and read a math book with him for a day. That's the Vsauce 2 top tier payoff.
I'm going to sign up right now.
Well, Bobby, thanks again. Everybody check out Sailing Doodles. It's totally different than perhaps what you're used to. And it's really, really a fascinating channel. I have enjoyed checking out your videos over the past week, and I encourage everybody else to do so and see where Bobby ends up next, or where he ended up next a couple of months ago, at least.
Well, I appreciate it, and I really enjoy you guys' work too. I watch all your stuff too, so really nice.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, and until next week, everyone. See you, Space Cowboys.
Thanks for listening to The Create Unknown. We'd like to extend a huge thank you and congratulations to the Tots and Dumpster crew who save tiny little lives every month. A tremendous shout out to our elite baby gang: Trevstead, Boromir, Bot Dogs, Chinchilla, Isaac, Conrad, James, Jeff Davis, Patrick Pister, Baseweight, and Dojangles. And thank you to our grizzled, battle-hardened child infantry: Jen Mefisanti, Kevin Menard, Mikhail Steinke, Risebread, Sean Malone, Monahim, Ryan Kinder, Sheep, and Maruko. Thank you as well to our producer and editor Ben Webster and to our media manager Dan Yosua. The Create Unknown is an Unknown Media production.